وعلى أهل بيت الطيبين الطاهرين واللعن على أعدائهم أجمعين من أول يوم ظلمهم إلى قيام يوم الدين. أما بعد، فقال الله سبحانه وتعالى في كتابه المبين وقوله الحق. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قد أفلح المؤمنون. صدق الله العلي العظيم. First of our salawat in honor of the Holy Prophet and Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ala Muhammad. The second of our salawat in honor of Imam Hassan and Sayyid Abu Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam. The third of our salawat in honor of the Imam of our time, Imam Sahib al-Asr wa Zaman alayhi salam. Dear brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. This phrase from the Quran where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, قَدْ أَفْلَحَ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ. Surely it's the mu'minun that are going to be successful. If you look at the word mu'min and the many derivatives that it comes in, you see that this word, it comes in the Quran over 200 times. Over 200 times in the Quran. But the question to be asked is, what is a mu'min? One. The question to be asked is, what's the difference between Iman and Islam? The question to be asked is, isn't everyone that is a Muslim, aren't they automatically a mu'min? These are the questions that we need to look at, because if you look at the Quran, there in Surah Al-Hujurat, it specifically tells you the difference between Islam and Iman. And for us, if we're going to consider ourselves to be mu'mineen, then we need to know what the sifat of a mu'min are. We need to know what the characteristics of a mu'min is, and see if truly we follow what the Ahlul Bayt say. And look at ourselves and truly see, are we truly mu'mineen the way Amir al-Mu'mineen has described his people to be? When you look at the Quran, so many verses of the Quran, it says, for example, it's the mu'mineen that are going to be successful. So who are the mu'mineen? What are the criteria to become a mu'min? And this is what I want to look at tonight. If you look at Karbala, there's no doubt that you had Muslims on both sides. Muslim meaning what? Someone that recited the kalima. Someone that has recited the shahadatain. That's it. That is the only criteria to be a Muslim. To recite La ilaha illallah, Muhammadur Rasulullah. That is the criteria to be a Muslim. But what is the criteria to be a mu'min? If that's the criteria to be a Muslim, you see that in the camp of Yazid, those people recited that kalima. In the camp of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam, they also recited that kalima. But what was the difference between the two camps? What was that difference? It was the Iman. In the camp of Yazid, there was no Iman. In the camp of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam, there was nothing but Iman. And that's what we want to look at today. What is Iman? If you look at the Nahj Balagha, Amir al-Mu'mineen, he says that Iman and the type of Iman that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from the people, the type of Iman that the Holy Prophet wants from the people, the type of Iman that the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam themselves, they want from the people that believe in them. Amir al-Mu'mineen in Nahj Balagha, when describing Iman, he says, look, Iman, there's two types of Iman. One, he says that it's Iman al-Mustaqir. That's Iman that is steadfast in an individual's heart. Belief that is steadfast in an individual's heart. That type of Iman, it doesn't waver. Compared to the other type of Iman, which is known as Iman al-Mustawda. Meaning that Iman that wavers. When life is good, you have complete faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As soon as something happens in your life, you start wavering. What type of Iman do you think that Abu Abdullah al-Hussein had on his side? If you look at the people of Kufa that invited, as a Muslim, that invited Abu Abdullah al-Hussein al-Islam, what type of Iman did they have? You see that there's a stark difference. And I'm not looking at 1400 years ago just for the sake of looking at 1400 years ago. No, I'm looking at 1400 years ago so then we can compare those individuals with ourselves today. Why? Because we are also calling the Imam of this time to come and guide us. We are also counting. Don't look at history and don't think that, oh, you know what, I've read history, that's enough. No. You learn from history. If you do not learn from history, you're doomed to repeat it. If we're condemning those individuals 1400 years ago that condemned the Ahlul Bayt, that rose up against the Ahlul Bayt, and we're doing the same exact thing today, what's the difference between us and them then? There would be no difference. What would be the difference between those Kufans that wrote letters to Abu Abdullah Hussein telling him to come, we're ready, and us who are telling Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to send the Imam of our time because we're ready? And when he comes, we do the same thing the people of Kufa did. What would be the difference? There would be no difference between us and them. What was the difference? The Iman that they had, there was a complete difference in the Iman that they all had and the Iman that those 313 or those 72 in the camp of Abu Abdullah Hussein had. The Iman that those individuals had was that Iman that did not waver no matter what happened. That's the Iman you and I need to have. How do we get that Iman? Is it just through Salat? Is it just through fasting? Is it just through Hajj? No, these are important steps to getting to that Iman. These are important. There's no doubt that these are important. But when the Bedouins, Surah Al-Hujurat, verse number 15, when the Bedouins of Medina, when they came to the Holy Prophet and they told the Holy Prophet, Ya Abul Qasim, there happened to be a drought. And because there was a drought in that year, they weren't able to grow any crop, they weren't able to find any food. So what ended up happening was the people of Medina, when they would travel, they'd go, and it was a group from the Banu Asad clan. They would go and they told these individuals that, there's a person who came in Medina, he claims to be a prophet. If you accept his teachings, then you'll get zakat, you'll get alms, and he'll help you with your life. These people, when they heard this, they came to Medina. And they came to the Holy Prophet and they told him, Ya Abul Qasim, we have this many people in our tribe. We have this many horses with us. We have all of this with us. And we did not fight against you the same way or the way that this Falan tribe fought against you. I said a few nights ago that 1400 years ago, it wasn't the case that the people that accepted Islam, they accepted Islam because that they truly believed the tenets of Islam to be correct. They accepted Islam, why? Because they wanted a benefit out of Islam. That was it. And you see, when you read stories like this, you see that yes, there were individuals that truly just accepted Islam for the benefit. That was it. These people, they came to the Holy Prophet and they're telling the Holy Prophet that if you help us, we'll do this for you, we'll do this for you. As if you reciting the kalima is going to help the Holy Prophet. As if you reciting the kalima is going to help Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. No, you reciting the kalima is only going to help no one but yourself. But they thought that they were doing a favor to the Holy Prophet by becoming Muslim. They were thinking that if they would become Muslim, it's going to be a favor to the Holy Prophet. Why? Because now, if there's a war, then this many people are going to go to war for the Holy Prophet. If there's a war, all these horses that we have, they're going to be in the service of the Holy Prophet. They thought that they were doing a favor to those, but in reality, no. If they accepted Islam, they were only doing a favor to themselves. But what is it that they said? They said, Amanna. When these Arabs, when these Bedouins, they came to the Holy Prophet, they said, we believe. What does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say? Did he say yes? They believe? No, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he tells the Holy Prophet to tell them, do not say you believe. Do not say you believe, but say that you submitted. Don't say amanna, say aslamna. What's the difference between iman and taslim? This verse of the Quran, it tells you that there is truly a difference between faith and submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Later in the same verse, what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say? Why does he want these Bedouins to say amanna? Because he says, why? Iman has not rested in your hearts yet. Iman is not in your hearts yet. So this verse of the Quran itself, it tells us what? That Iman is something that will be in the hearts of an individual. Taslim, Islam is what? La ilaha illallah, Muhammadur Rasulullah. That's it. Taslim is what? The belief in Tawheed, the belief in Nabuwat, the belief in Qayamat. If you say these and you believe these, this is Islam. That's it. Then what is Iman? Iman is not the mere saying of these things. Iman is you truly believing them and having them in your heart. That's what Iman is. And you see these individuals that came and accepted Islam, they didn't have that. Their reasoning for accepting Islam was completely different. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, do not say that you have Iman, but just say that you've submitted. You've submitted. You see that this was the majority of Muslims at that time. And today too, the majority of Muslims, they have Islam, that's absolutely true. But do they have Iman? Even amongst the Shias, we say that we are what? Mu'minun, do we not? If we are truly Mu'minun, then do we have the characteristics of a Mu'min? What is it, for example, Amir al-Mu'mineen says is the characteristic of a Mu'min? What is it that Sadiq ala Muhammad says is the characteristic of a Mu'min? What is it that Imam Baqir says is the characteristic of a Mu'min? What is it that 11th Imam Hassan Askari says is the characteristic of a Mu'min? All of these Imams, they give characteristics of Mu'mineen. Do you know, if you look at Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, they say, Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ala Muhammad. Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, he was asked, Ya ibn Rasulullah, can a mu'min commit this sin? Imam Sadiq said, yes, it's possible that they commit this fulan sin. Can a mu'min commit this sin? Yes, it's possible. Can a mu'min Shia do this sin? Yeah, it's possible. What about this sin? Yes, it's possible. Later, he asked the Imam, Ya ibn Rasulullah, can a mu'min lie? Imam, he says no. Imam, he says no. If an individual is truly a Shia and a mu'min, then there is no lying and mu'min going together. A mu'min will never lie. A mu'min will never lie. And that's exactly what the Quran says when it's describing the mu'minun. It says that the mu'minun do not lie. The mu'minun do not lie. And you see today, forget the rest of Islam, but within the Shia, how many people lie? How many people lie? Not just amongst ourselves, not just amongst family, not just amongst friends. If this line was just taken out of society, meaning people stopped doing it, it would be the solution to so many problems that exist in the society. And you see, in the Holy Prophet's time, there was a young man. He used to steal a lot. He used to steal a lot. And he comes to the Holy Prophet and he goes, Ya Rasulullah, can you tell me something that I shouldn't do? Can you tell me something that I shouldn't do? Did the Holy Prophet not know that this man stole? Yes, he's Rasulullah. He knew. The Holy Prophet, he tells him, look, just do one thing. He goes, what is it? He goes, don't lie. Don't lie. This young man, he takes what the Holy Prophet says, and the next night, he wanted to rob a house. When he wanted to rob a house, he puts the stairs, he gets up to the wall. When he gets up to the wall, he starts to think to himself, you know what? The Holy Prophet told me not to lie. If tomorrow he asks me about this, what am I going to do? Am I going to lie? He goes, no, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to steal anymore. He stopped stealing. When it came to drinking, he asked the same question. If the Holy Prophet asked me, what am I going to tell him? I can't lie, I don't want to lie. This way, all of the bad sins or all of the sins that he was committing, just because of this one phrase of the Holy Prophet, do not lie, he stops those sins. He stops those sins. If you think to yourself, tomorrow Imam Zaman is coming. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ala Muhammad. If you think to yourself, tomorrow Imam Zaman is coming, and he asks me about a certain act, what am I going to say? Am I going to lie to the Imam of my time? Or no? This is why it becomes crucial to start tazkiyat al-nafs. This is why it becomes crucial to start practicing and controlling your soul. Why? So when the Imam appears, if he says, you know what, I have your amal in front of me, there was a day that you did this, you can say, Ya Ibn Rasulullah, yes, there was. I repented. If it wasn't accepted, then I'm here in front of you asking for forgiveness. I'm here in front of you asking for forgiveness if it wasn't accepted. And you see that these are the type of individuals that ask for forgiveness. Those were the people that came to Abu Abdullah al-Hussein al-Islam. Those were the types of people. These were the mu'mineen. When you look at Imam Hussein al-Islam and his companions, this is what separated them from the rest. This iman al-mustaqir. How do you and I have this iman? How do you get this iman? Is it just by praying? No. All of these little sins that we commit, everyone needs to know this. Imam Baqir Islam, he says that every time an individual commits a sin, it leaves a black spot on the heart. The heart, he's not talking about this organ that pumps the blood. No, he's talking about the ruh. He's talking about the soul. It leaves a black spot. As this individual continues to commit sins, the spot grows and grows and grows. There comes a point in time when it's completely covered in black. And no matter what he tries to do, he can't get rid of it. Why? Because now that sin has completely taken a hold on this person's soul. It's difficult for them to get rid of it. But Imam, he says, look, the doors of mercy are open for everyone. If this individual, he commits a sin, after committing the sin, he repents to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will forgive him, and that mark goes away. That mark goes away. How many of us actually repent after we commit a sin? The other day we spoke about Hur. There is no bigger sin than stopping water from reaching Ala Muhammad. There is no bigger sin than stopping the Ahlul Bayt. There's no bigger sin than stopping Abu Abdullah al-Hussein al-Islam from going where he wanted to go. Denying the representative of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala what he wanted. Why? Because he's a representative of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Once you start denying or once you start coming out against the representative of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what does that amount to? It amounts to kufr. This is why I say that there isn't a bigger sin, because it amounts to kufr. And in Islam, what is the sin that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not forgive? This is the only sin that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala never forgives. So when you sin, Imam Baqir al-Islam, he says, as soon as you sin, repent. But what type of repentance? Is it what most of us do after we commit a sin? We come to the mosque or we're in the corner of the house and we have 1 or 2 tears and we say, Ya Allah, forgive me? No. What you have to understand is, depending on the type of sin that you committed, the repentance is going to be different. If the sin that you and I committed is in regards to me and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then the tawbah is going to be different. If the sin is between me and another person, then the tawbah is going to be different. For example, Imam Riza alayhi salam, what does he say? He says, Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ala Muhammad. He says that when an individual sins between him and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, meaning what? Meaning Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made it wajib for prayers. But if the individual stops praying, doesn't pray, how is he going to do tawbah? If an individual takes the right of another person, how is this individual going to do tawbah? Is he just going to say astaghfirullah and end it? No. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said that something is haram, and this individual does that haram act, how is he going to do tawbah? Is he just going to say astaghfirullah and that's it? No. And this is what we don't understand. How do you do tawbah depending on the sin that you've committed? When it comes to, for example, not doing a wajib act, What does Amir al-Mu'mineen say? Hatta Amir al-Mu'mineen, Masjid al-Kufa. He walks in, when he walks in, he hears an individual say, Astaghfirullah. Astaghfirullah. When he says this, Amir al-Mu'mineen, he gets angry and he tells them, Atadri mal astaghfar? Do you know what astaghfar is? Astaghfar is a position of illiyin. Astaghfar is a position for those that are high. Those that are high. And he goes on to say, before you can even say astaghfar, you have to go through 6 pillars. You have to go through these 6 pillars. And he starts describing them. He says, look, the same way when you committed a sin, you felt excited, you felt happy. Now, what do? Now you come to the doorsteps of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and you ask for forgiveness. How do you ask for forgiveness? One, if it's haram that you've eaten, you make sure that the flesh that you have is completely burned off so that you can come to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with no sins in terms of haram. Why does he say this? And this is something everyone needs to understand. Our du'as are either accepted or rejected. One of the reasons our du'as are either accepted or rejected is because of the food that we eat. Of the food that we eat. If the food we're eating is haram, then it's preventing our du'as from getting to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And of the food, pick up Risala Amaliya. The only thing that you need to make sure is absolutely haram or absolutely halal is meat. That's it. Meat. If you eat meat, you need to be absolutely sure that this meat is halal. It doesn't matter how you reach certainty, but you need to be certain that this meat is halal. Why? Why have the Ahlul Bayt emphasized this fact? The protein, our muscles are made from what? They're made from protein. Where do we get most of our protein from? Meat. So when Amir al-Mu'mineen says that that flesh that you have needs to be burned, the flesh that was created from eating haram, it needs to be burned off. What does Amir al-Mu'mineen mean? Does he mean to literally burn it? No. What ends up happening when you start fasting? Everyone, if you're a doctor, if you're into biology, you know the body starts eating away its own flesh. There comes a time when the body starts eating away its own protein. When it starts eating away your protein, what ends up happening? The muscles that you have, they become weaker. The muscles that you have, they start breaking down. That's when you eat halal and you build up halal body. 1, 2. Amir al-Mu'mineen says, before you say astaghfar, one of the things that an individual needs to do, which we do not do, we'll commit a sin, we'll say astaghfar. The next day we'll commit the same sin again. We'll do astaghfar. The next day we'll commit the same sin again. Amir al-Mu'mineen, he says, no. Once you've said astaghfar, or once you've realized that yes, you've committed a sin, then you have to be dead serious about not committing that sin again. You have to be dead serious about not committing that sin. Why? Because Imam Raza alayhi salam, he himself, he says that anyone that commits a sin, ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive them, and then commits that sin again, Imam Raza alayhi salam, he says that he's kidding no one but himself. This individual is only kidding themselves. That's it. So when you say astaghfar, it's not as if you just say astaghfar and everything's okay. No. 6 pillars that you have to go through before you say astaghfar. Whatever wajibat, Amir al-Mu'min, whatever wajibat that you missed, you make sure that you make up those wajibat. Amir al-Mu'min, whatever haqq of another person that was taken from them, you make sure that you give that haqq back. Amir al-Mu'min, what does he say? He says that whatever haramat that you were doing, you make sure that you never commit them again. Because after you do all of this, then you say astaghfar. Then you say astaghfar. Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, he says, depending on the sin, this is where I was at. Depending on the sin, your astaghfar is going to be different. If it's between me and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made it wajib for me to pray, I don't pray. I don't pray. That means what? I make up that wajib prayer. and then I say astaghfar. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said that something is haram and I do that haram act, that's between me and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I make sure that I do not commit that haram act again and I say astaghfar. If it's something regarding me and another mu'min, me and another, not even just a mu'min, no, forget mu'min. Me and another human being. If I've taken money from someone, if I borrowed money from someone, I don't just say astaghfar and don't pay them and expect Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive. No, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not forgive like that. If I've murdered someone, I don't just say astaghfar and then say, oh, you know what, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to forgive. No, that's not how the astaghfar works in regards to this sin. The money needs to be paid back. If I've killed someone, what happens? I need to go to the warisin of this person. I need to go to the people of that house and I need to tell them, hey, I did this. What do you want to do? What do you want to do? In the time of Amir al-Mu'mineen, Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. In the time of Amir al-Mu'mineen, there's an individual that committed zina. He was a muhib of Amir al-Mu'mineen. He had committed zina. He went to Amir al-Mu'mineen and he tells Amir al-Mu'mineen himself, Ya Ali, I've committed zina, I want you to punish me. Amir al-Mu'mineen, he looks at him and he goes, you know what, just go. Just go. He goes, Ya Ali, no, I want you to punish me, I've committed zina. Amir al-Mu'mineen, he tells him again, he goes, you know what, just go home. You might not be feeling well, just go home. Just go home. Then he goes, Ya Ali, no, you are the representative of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I've committed zina, I want you to punish me in this world so that I don't get punishment in the next world. That's when Amir al-Mu'mineen says that now that you yourself have admitted not once but 3 times that you committed this crime, now I'm going to punish you. Meaning what? Amir al-Mu'mineen was giving him chances. He gave him 2 chances. So just go. No, now that you yourself have claimed 3 times that I committed this crime, now I'm going to punish you. And Amir al-Mu'mineen punishes him. He punishes him. This is what it means to be Amir al-Mu'mineen. That's what it means to be a mu'min. One of the characteristics of a mu'min was not to lie. He came to the Imam of his time and he told him, Ya Ali, this is what I've done. If you look at the Quran itself, it tells us the description of a mu'min. Surah Al-Hujurat. It tells us the mu'mineen are those people that believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the messenger. 1, 2. The mu'mineen are not just those that you believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the messenger, but once you believe, you do not go back on that. You do not have any doubt on that. 3. The 4th, it's not that you just do not have any doubt on that, but the mu'mineen are those people that do jihad with their wealth. Not just with their wealth, but they also do jihad with their souls, with themselves. For what? For the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. For the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Look into history. You had so many companions of the Holy Prophet. When it came to jihad, were they doing jihad for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? No. They were doing jihad for what? Mal. They were doing jihad for what? The wealth that they were going to receive from killing the enemies. That's why they were doing jihad. You look at companions of the Holy Prophet, you had people that would not spend anything in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they prevent others from spending it. You look at companions of the Holy Prophet, they themselves, they doubted the Holy Prophet's prophethood. Hatta the second Khalifa, one of the most major incidents that happened in the time of the Holy Prophet in Islam was what? The Treaty of Hudaybiyah. After that treaty was signed, if you look into history book, what was the phrase that this individual said? He said that I never doubted the prophethood of Muhammad more than I doubted it on the day of Hudaybiyah. I never doubted the prophethood of Muhammad more than I doubted it on the day of Hudaybiyah. If you analyze this, what does this mean? This means that he doubted the prophet of the Holy Prophet before this day. But on the day of Hudaybiyah, he doubted it even more. So when you have people that are doubting the prophethood of the Holy Prophet, they're doubting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How are they mu'min? The Quran has given us this definition. The Quran says that these are the characteristics of a mu'min. That they believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they believe in the Holy Prophet, and once they believe, they do not doubt. Look at this, look at the Muslims. If this is the criteria of a mu'min, then the criteria of Amir al-Mu'mineen, it needs to be greater than this. Why? Because this individual, he's the leader of the mu'mineen. If he's the leader of the mu'mineen, then the belief that he has, it needs to be greater than the belief of the people that are following him. The truthfulness that he has, it needs to be at a higher degree than the people that are following him. The jihad that this individual does with their souls and their wealth, it needs to be at a greater degree than the jihad that the people that are following him. So when you look at this verse of the Quran, you see that this verse is specifically for who? Just one companion of the Holy Prophet. And this companion happens to be from the Ahlul Bayt. This individual is no one other than Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam. Why? Because because at the end of this verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says what? The mu'minun are the truthful. The mu'minun are the truthful. Is there anyone more truthful than Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam? From the cradle to the grave, Amir al-Mu'mineen spoke the truth. Yet the Muslims, they left him and chose who? They chose an individual who was a kafir for the majority of his life. After him, they chose another individual who's a kafir for the majority of his life. After him, the same thing. You look at Karbala, you look at the companions of Abu Abdullah Hussein alayhi salam. You see that the iman they had, the Holy Prophet had told Amir al-Mu'mineen that this son of mine is going to have such companions that they'll not be able to feel the steel when it hits their body. They won't feel that steel when it hits their body. Why? Because of the faith that they had. Because of the belief that they had in regards to Abu Abdullah Hussein alayhi salam. Brothers and sisters, tonight we commemorate the shahadat of who? Not just a Safir of Abu Abdullah Hussein alayhi salam. When he writes that letter and gives it to Muslim bin Aqil, do you know what he writes on that letter to take to the people of Kufa? The first thing he writes is that this, meaning Muslim, I'm giving this letter to my brother. To my brother.